Ed Close is kind of like one of my guys that I really like reading because he writes really interesting stuff, and he writes on quantum physics. Now, I'm going to read you something here out of this book that I've marked. I've got about 100 pages of his book turned down on quantum physics. And, you know, this is interesting. He goes, with the event of quantum mechanics, it became even clearer that matter, energy, time, and space are all inextricably woven together in the fabric of reality. And now we have strong evidence that observation is required for reality to manifest as a matter of energy. At the very least, the results of the aspect experiment imply that there is no way to prove the quanta of matter and energy exist prior to the completion of an observation. But what is the mechanism by all of which all of this takes place? Then he goes on to say, in conscious observation, the cause of physical reality, or would be the same physical reality exists with or without the presence of the involvement of conscious entity or entities. The new paradigm will also have to explain what time and space are in a non-locale reality and how a choice is made by a conscious observer can determine the form of the physical phenomenon observed. Ed, I love stuff like this. Good to have you on with me today.
Well, thank you, Ted. It's a pleasure to be here. I've enjoyed being on Power Hour couple times before, but it's the first time you and I have talked, so it's a pleasure to meet you.
Well, it is. Well, I'm all about this stuff with the holographic universe and, you know, transcendental physics. And I had a year of physics and calculus. I'm a biologist. I'm a chemist. I'm a scientist. And so when I read stuff like this, it really, really gets me excited because I get to think about things and to challenge my own belief paradigms as far as how things really work. And that's why I wanted to bring you on because, you know, so many people don't understand how this stuff works, and then there's different theories as to how it works. So kind of tell me, in the first few minutes that we have here, have you changed your opinion on anything you've written in this book since it was written several years ago?
No, not on the basic understanding. I have new discoveries and revelations since I've been working for the past going on 7 years now with Dr. Vernon Neppy, who's internationally known neuroscientist, and we've been working together on fleshing out a paradigm extended beyond transcendental physics to include psychology and biology and all of the sciences, really. What we've found is when you actively put consciousness into the equations of science, you get a whole different picture of what reality is all about. And that's been the missing link. All of the theories of everything that you hear about, they're not really theories of everything because most of them are put together by physicists. Of course, my background is physics and math to begin with. But the problem is physicists tend to think only in terms of matter, energy, time, and space. And their theory of everything uses that as the basic assumption. So as a result, scientists have become, many of them, more and more agnostic, if not outright atheistic, saying things like we have no need for a concept of God or spirit or divinity.
Now, let me ask you a real quick question. Let me preface something that I just read for a second, and I want you to explain this to people. You know, this was done with the slit experiments, the slot experiments, in which they were actually able to show that the consciousness of a human being actually formed the reality that we see and that we experience, and that without consciousness there was no reality. Now, explain to people what that means, that if we don't have a conscious involvement in this, there's only randomness in the universe. Explain it. I love this book, but go ahead. Can you explain it in a simple way that everybody can understand?
Well,
hang on a second, Ed. We're coming right. We're going to a break right now. We're going to have a long break at the bottom of the hour, and we're going to have another short break coming up in just a second. But everybody stay tuned. More with Ed in just a few moments. Done talking to Ed during Dr. Close over this last break, and I asked him, I said very sincerely, I said, look, my audience is primarily conservative on this show, so I don't want to ask you a question that, I don't want to say something to you that's going to embarrass you. But I asked him, I said, do you believe in Jesus Christ? And he Christ as a Christian? He goes, absolutely, yes, I consider Jesus Christ to be my personal Lord and Savior. So I wanted to clarify that with you guys really, really quick because, see, this doesn't have to be mutually exclusive. A lot of my friends who are Christians say, well, you can't believe any of that stuff. You can't even try to figure out, what's going on and how the universe works. That's of Satan. That's of Lucifer if you try to figure out how this thing works and why we're here. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Are you living in the dark ages? What, are you still in a Roman Catholic rule and you read the Bible, you're going to go to hell, they say, or be excommunicated or be beheaded or tortured? That's not what this is about anymore. We've got to educate the population to realize there's more than we've been taught by the universities. I told you once before that we had a professor at Florida State who was my ecology professor, and he ended up talking about evolution being completely ridiculous, and he was terminated the following semester from Florida State, no longer worked there. See, this is what we have to understand. The universities and the professors are telling us lies because they're atheists. They want everybody else to be atheists because they don't have any hope in God. They don't want anybody else to have a hope in God, and they're continuing to believe the lies and promulgate the lies. And that's why I love about Dr. Close. He's talking the truth and telling you the truth about how reality is formed by our consciousness, this hologram that we're in, whatever you want to call it. We're also going to ask him some questions about the CERN collider and how that works. So we got a lot of really fun stuff going on this hour. So you guys stay tuned. This may be a little bit technical in some areas, but you're going to learn some stuff today, especially this hour. And I want you to stay here with me because I talk about this stuff all the time on the show. You guys know that I do. I talked about it the other night with Hagman, and it ended up being one of the top 30 shows in the iTunes download for the entire week on newscasts. So you guys listen to Dr. Close and listen to what he's saying because he makes sense. He's a believer, and he's trying to tie together consciousness and reality and how everything works. Now, tell me about the CERN collider, Dr. Close. Tell me what's going on and why they're trying to open up these portals.
Yeah, the thing is with the collider, and I go into that in a lot of detail in a recent book that Dr. Vernon Neppy and I have written, co-authored, and it's experimental, and there's nothing wrong with that. The collider does smash particles together, protons and neutrons, and splits them off and looks at the patterns that are created by this. And so they talk about the particle zoo. Well, the particle zoo is created by the collider, and they tell us, and they do this mainly to get funding. They say, well, we're looking at in the collider at what it was like at the beginning of the universe, the Big Bang. Well, that's nonsense. It's very easy to disprove that very quickly because it is nothing like the origin or the beginning of the universe. Nobody ever saw an explosion create anything. It's just exactly the opposite. It creates what we physicists call entropy, which is lack of order. Now, when they see these particles and they define them, most of them decay very quickly. The only particles that really make up the vast majority of the universe, hydrogen atoms and all of the natural elements of the periodic table, are neutrons, protons, and electrons. It's that simple, and they're made up of quarks, which we found actually cannot combine to form symmetric objects unless there is a third something involved. But
Doc, tell me the dangers of the CERN collider. Are there any dangers, or is that overstated too? I mean, opening up these other dimensional portals, what in the world are they trying to do by doing that? Are they trying to look in there to see what's there, or are they trying just to...
Yeah, the problem is that most scientists are not meditators. They're not. By that I mean they do not spend time working on their consciousness and understanding the depth of the universe. So they're only looking at matter, energy, time, and space. But there's something else. We call that spirit generally. And what we've been able to demonstrate is that there would be no universe without consciousness. There just wouldn't be. And even the hypothesis that there would be is not even a scientific hypothesis. It's simply a belief. A scientific hypothesis has to be capable of demonstration, of being proved or disproved.
Let's talk about the CERN collider. Let's talk about the different portals they're trying to open in different dimensions. Why are they trying to do this?
Well, other than, here's the problem. They can get funding by talking about they're trying to learn the nature of reality and how the universe was formed. But their problem is they're not including consciousness, even though there are many, many, many indications of that in their own data. But they're blind to that, and there are dangers because if you truly open into, and what Dr. Neppy and I have found is that there are 9 dimensions. But these 9 dimensions, this is kind of like string theory. They have multiple dimensions, but these 9 dimensions are not exactly like the dimensions of space and time. There are more than one dimension. There's more than one dimension of time. And there's more than, and 3 of the dimensions are dimensions of consciousness. So the danger here is by, bursting into the multiple dimensions of the universe, they can actually cause a problem that could cascade down. One of the early problems that was concern of many was starting a nuclear chain reaction. And that hasn't happened because number one, the CERN collider, even though it's the largest one in the world, the LHC, the Large Hadron Collider, even with the high level of energy that they have, is not enough energy to open all of the dimensions, and that's a good thing. And also, it is too small in they're colliding only particles, not large masses. So there is a safety factor there as far as the nuclear cascade, but the danger is in not understanding that the dimensions are not all dimensions they're not all space-like. And if you get into the 3 dimensions of time, which, by the way, I discussed years ago with Stephen Hawking, and he couldn't accept it. But when you get into that, you realize that you are entering a godlike realm, excuse me, where all past, present, and future is opened up to you, all of the infinite number of possibilities. And so the danger is that you can cause timelines that are not conducive to human existence even. And that's while physicists see that we're in this random, violent universe, and it's true, and we wouldn't last a minute if it weren't for what we're calling in our studies primary consciousness, what a believer calls God. That is the background and the source of all things.
So, Dr. Tillich, he was a German philosopher in 1933. He talked about the different dimensions, and he also talked about how God resides in the eternal now, which is one of the levels of consciousness. I'm sure you're familiar with Tillich's work.
Yes, and I agree 100%. And what we've been doing is showing mathematically and dimensionometrically that this is the case. The German scientist and philosopher Wilhelm Leibniz, I don't know if you're familiar with Leibniz, he was probably one of the smartest men who ever lived. And he said, way back in the 1700s, 1714, I believe, he said the most important question that scientists should be answering first is why is there something rather than nothing? And this is an excellent question because if you look at the laws of nature, specifically Newton's laws and the laws of thermodynamics, there should be no universe.
That's right.
If there was a big bang, as soon as a particle accidentally got together, which is what the atheistic scientists are telling us, that this all happened randomly and by accident, as soon as 2 particles got together, they would decay because of the second law of thermodynamics and because of the symmetry of for every action there's an equal and opposite reaction. So there would be no universe.
We would have complete disorder, that's correct.
That's right. And that's what people like Steven Weinberg is a leading physicist. I've talked with him. He's looked at some of my work. He started off by calling me a crackpot, but then he read my whole book. The thing that they're telling us, Stephen had the famous quote that the more we know about reality, the less meaningful it becomes. But that's because you're not looking at all of reality. You're only looking at matter, energy, time, and space. You cannot have a theory of everything if everything's not in it. So you have to include
that's you're exactly right. See, the problem with most Christians that we have, and most people in general, not just Christians, is that nobody wants to explore the fact that, this reality that we're in is not really even real, that it's not even real if we don't have consciousness to produce it. This holographic projection that we all seem to be wandering around in has a whole lot more meaning to it when it comes to the other dimensions of time, space, and along with the eternal now that we talk about in these different books. And we have to understand that heaven is a whole lot more real than we are here, and we're kind of like a projection being played out for us down here. And it's kind of interesting. I mean, now, when you talk about eternal consciousness and consciousness, how do you tie the human soul into that? I mean, do you look at the human soul as the consciousness of the human being?
Yeah.
Hang on one second, Ed. We'll finish that question. We come back. We got a break coming up. We got to hear the music playing. You guys, you get a great interview today with Ed Close. You guys are going to love this program. I feel actually honored and humbled by the fact that he's on with me, that he's written all these books on all this stuff that I love reading about. We just said something. He said something very interesting to me. He says physics has been telling us for years and years and years that the reality that we know of as reality is not the real reality. There's a lot more to it than we don't want to talk about. That physics has proven it. And he also said that our five senses are reduction valves that allow us only to see a tiny, tiny, tiny sliver, that we don't hear what we need to hear, we don't see what we need to see, because of all the different UVs that we have and different spectrums that we don't see into or hear into, and how we've been detuned, so to speak, by our senses, and there's a whole lot more out there that we simply can't perceive or understand. Now, one other thing that you said that was very, very good, and I forgot where we were at the end of the last segment. You guys have to remind me where we were, because we were going to cover something. But you said that the consciousness has no physical locality. In other words, the consciousness that we have in our mind is not really part of our body. It's not our soul. It's kind of detached, and it has no physical locality. I found that fascinating, Dr. Close. Now, go ahead and explain to everybody what you mean by that.
Yes, that's a very interesting question, because the problem is that people. In fact, I have friends in the scientific community. I've been involved in the what's called Tour de Science of Consciousness at the University of Arizona in Tucson for several years, and I know the leading people there, and they're all searching, like Roger Penrose is there, and several other well-known scientists, physicists, and mathematicians. They're searching for the seat of consciousness in the physical body, and they'll never find it there because they're looking in the wrong place. It's not in microtubules in the brain. Consciousness is multidimensional. It's not just three-dimensional, and it's not located in any one point in the body.
Okay, one second. We got to slow down for 1 second, okay? Now, what you just said was one of the most important statements that you've made on the show today, and I want you to repeat this, or I can try to paraphrase it for you. Consciousness is not one-dimensional. It's multidimensional. It goes into the realm of God. It goes into all these other unconscious and conscious realms, and we can't really understand what those realms are. Go ahead and repeat that one more time.
Yes, not through the senses, certainly. We can through, the biblical injunction that says, if thine eye be single, then thy whole body shall be filled with light. This is the biblical reason for practicing concentration and looking for the soul and looking for God. I believe that really our purpose in life is to know the reality of primary consciousness, and primary consciousness is what we call God. You'll know when you reach your final destiny, because that is what we're here for. And we shouldn't be hung up on dogma and doctrine, whether it's dogma and doctrine of religion or the dogma and doctrine of academic materialism. We have to go beyond that. Dogma and doctrine are dead, and they are the things that keep us primarily from understanding the full reality. And science has been telling us that since the 30s. Einstein and Bohr had a big debate about the nature of reality, and there's been no real advance, no real breakthrough in science and physics and mathematical physics since that time, and the reason is they're not looking outside the box of materialism.
Let me make one comment here. We talked about the pineal gland during the break and how it's the seat of consciousness. A lot of ancients believed. A lot of folks believe that's the silver cord or the cord of living water that ties us into the unconscious realm. What the globalists have done, that they have pumped us full of fluoride, especially in the United States, and fluoride we know calcifies the pineal gland, which decreases its ability to function properly. Everything's been doing, like you said, there's been no real advance since the 30s as far as the understanding of consciousness. And the reason for that, Dr. Close, is I believe that they're kind of scared to do that because they don't want to, it goes against their atheist paradigm. What do you think about that?
Yes, that's right. You cannot control people who have a direct line to God. And we all have.
There you go. You cannot control people who have a direct line to God. Guys, if you don't hear another word on this show today, that right there was the word that you can put that on a wall. You cannot control people that have a direct line to God. This is why the Catholic Church forbid people from even reading the Bible, forbid people from developing a personal relationship with Jesus Christ. They had to go through the priest hierarchy of the Catholic Church. This is what Dr. Close is talking about as far as I'm concerned, is this religion that we have that's been around this world now for thousands and thousands of years. I'm not talking about true Christianity. I'm talking about religion that tends to control people and force people to believe what they want them to believe, to be mindless robots, mindless amoebas, to listen to what they tell them to do, and not learn the truth about if you have a direct line to God, you cannot be controlled. That was very well said, Dr. Close. Again, Dr. Ed Close has some videos that he's doing on YouTube now talking about all of this stuff. Do you have a channel on YouTube, Dr. Close, or do we just type in Dr. Ed Close and go to YouTube?
Well, that'll get you to some of them at least, but we also have a channel. It's called Science and Spirituality TV. We just launched this a couple of weeks ago.
I'm going to write this down. Science, everybody write this down.
Science,
Spirituality
TV.
Okay, Dr. Ed Close. Okay. Now, also, you got a book. It's called Transcendental Physics. Guys, I love this stuff. You may like it, may not like it. I don't know. It's great, okay, by Dr. Ed Close, Ph.D. Now, you were saying also during the break that there's a universal consciousness that holds together the fabric of reality that goes around the earth, and that if one minute particle of any of this stuff were changed, because God's holding it all together, remember Christ said, all things are held together through him. If one particle of any of this changed, that we'd have chaos and the entire thing would come to a screeching halt. Explain to me what you meant by that.
Yeah, absolutely. If it weren't for what we're calling in our paradigm, Dr. Neppy and I, the third form of reality, which is consciousness, and it's seated in the primary consciousness, which is traditionally called God. If we didn't have that, it would be a chaotic universe, the way some of the atheistic and agnostic scientists believe. But it's not. It's held in place, and they're seeing it, but they don't know how to explain it. Dark matter and dark energy is really consciousness. It's really spirit.
Whoa, stop again. Dark matter and dark energy is really consciousness.
Yes.
I didn't read that one in your book. I missed that one. Did you say, is that in your old book, the book I read?
It is not. That's a new find.
I told you I read your book. I told you I read it. I never saw that.
Yes.
Dark matter, and dark energy is really consciousness. Okay, I got to write that down. Go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. And the reason we can show that is that at the quantum level, at the subquark level, the third form that is there turns out to have exactly the same ratio to matter and energy at the quantum level as the ratio of dark matter and dark energy to the visible universe out in the astrophysical
So consciousness.
It's all tied together. Yeah. It's all by consciousness.
Now, let me ask, now is the entire universe, all these planets that we see in these billions of stars, is that also tied together by consciousness?
Absolutely.
Okay, so this isn't a locale event for the Earth itself. This is the entire universe that God made.
It's the entire universe, and consciousness and life is what the universe is here for. It's the manifestation of the primary consciousness through the individualized consciousness.
Okay, well, you got to take this down a notch. Okay, what we're here for is this. Okay, the universe is the manifestation of God, which is the primary consciousness for all of us and our consciousness to live in.
Yes.
God created this for us. God, like it says in the Bible in Genesis, that God wanted to commune with men and wanted to basically have I guess a soul partner if we're created in His image. I guess so we're part of His consciousness by being in this holographic energy field that He put us into, so we can actually learn who we are to become one with God.
Yes, as Albert Einstein said. These are the thoughts of God. Well, he said, I want to know the thoughts of God. Everything else is just detail.
Okay, wait. I want to know the thoughts of God. Everything else is just detail. Oh, God, that's another one I got to write down. Okay, go ahead. And
I couldn't agree more. What we're doing now with the new paradigm, and we're calling it TDVP, so this is the step beyond the book Transcendental Physics. TDVP stands for Triadic, Dimensional, Distinction, Vortical Paradigm. And it's the broadened scientific paradigm that includes consciousness in the equations and shows that there had to be a primary consciousness before anything could exist in physical form.
Now, you told me that during the first break that you were past the age of being a college professor right now. You retired, and that they really can't affect you or try to affect your career anymore for telling the truth about this. So now you have more freedom to go out and tell people what's really going on in the interdimensional world of consciousness and the reality that God put us here. And now we're starting to understand why the Bible says that we're but just a mist, a vapor that's here for a little while, and this whole thing's not real that we're in, but the real thing is the primary consciousness that we return to after we die. Is that correct?
That's absolutely correct. And a friend of mine was lost his position, like you mentioned. I had a friend who lost his position at the university. I split from the university several years ago and went into independent research because they want to control you, and they want to control the funds, and they want to control what's taught. And that's not freedom of expression. It's not freedom of education. And yet we put ourselves forward in the world as being that, and we're not. Our universities are just have really become just places where a belief system, a materialistic belief system, is taught.
Well, and also what I've learned too. Remember, the people who control the universities are the people who control the money. The Rothschild banking cartel in the United States and the world controls all of the money pretty much globally. Now, what they don't want us to do is they don't want us to wake up. They don't want us to realize who we really are, what we really are through Christ Jesus, what we really are through God, through the universal consciousness or God. They don't want us to understand this. They want to keep us as mindless sheeple, so we continue to just go, bah, we watch the evening news and believe all this stuff, not question reality. Okay, Bob in Illinois. Bob in Illinois, you're one of my favorite callers. You got a question for the good doc?
I do, gentlemen. At a future date, I would like to discuss with you, Ted, about the worst president. Okay.
Okay. Well, let's stay on topic with Dr. Close.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. The thing is, the age-old question, I guess we will agree, is which came first, the chicken or the egg? But you know what's even more important than that? When you get with your atheist or, your people who don't believe in Christ, ask them what evolved from the age-old question, chicken and egg. We still have the chicken and the egg, and if they come up with an answer for that, I guess I'll entertain their thought evolution over creationism.
Good.
And I thank you for the time.
No, hang on 1 second, Bob. You can't leave me hanging like that. Who do you think was the worst president?
Well, okay. Wilson and Clinton were the second worst, tied together with the worst president, and the worst president was Ronald Reagan, and I will prove that to you at a later date when we talk. I mean, you got to see what happened back in that situation. We're living with it today, unfortunately. So another time, and I thank you, Ted.
Bob, thanks so much. Okay, we're going to go to Cecil in Tennessee. Cecil in Tennessee, do you have a question for the good Dr. Ed Close?
Dr. Close, it's very controversial. Hello?
Hey, Ed, I need you to call back. We got a real bad connection. John in Michigan, do you have a question for Dr. Ed Close? John, go ahead.
Oh, yes. I wonder if you have heard of... Hello?
Hello there, John. I think we've got a bad connection with GCN this morning. Scott, see if you can tighten up that connection with us a little bit. Go ahead, John. Let's try that again.
You ever heard of the delusion of the lie?
Okay, John, I'm sorry, buddy. You're going to have to call back. Guys, we're not going to take any more phone calls until we get this connection cleaned up with GNC. All we got is real bad garbling. I know my phone lines are all lit up. I got a couple clear lines. Go ahead and call back. But I'll go ahead and start back with Dr. Close while Scott's working on this connection. But, you know what's interesting to me, Dr. Close, is that, it's true that what Bob from Illinois said. He goes, the chicken or the egg, which came first? When you take consciousness out of the equation, you can't explain anything.
That's right, you can't. And when you put it in and you realize we're in a multidimensional universe, and Einstein started us down that by including time as the fourth dimension. When we go on and look at it mathematically, we find that the question of the chicken and the egg is really a good one. Excuse me. Because in three-dimensional time, all of the events of the universe, and this is God's secret, and you could say, is how he keeps, somebody said that time is God's way of keeping everything from happening at once. Well, the fact is that everything is there. It is never lost. Sorry. People who say, well, we'll never know this or that, I don't believe that. I think when we reach our true destination, which is to become one with the primary consciousness and know God directly, then we will understand the answer to all these questions. And three-dimensional time tells you that the chicken and the egg have both been there. They're both there. This goes back to quantum physics, too. Because forgive me for interrupting you, because I'm running out of time with you. I'm so excited to be probably being a bad host. But here's the thing. You're absolutely right. I mean, everything you've said is absolutely right. And until we understand that there is nothing without God, or you calling it the primary consciousness, which is easier for an equation, I guess, without the primary consciousness or God being involved in any of this, then nothing makes any sense. Now, let me ask you a question, since you're the theoretical physicist. Where did God come from? Because I know a lot of listeners are asking that. Where did this primary consciousness come from? I mean, or is that beyond the understanding of physics? No, not at all. Not if you understand multi-dimensions and multidimensional time. Here's the thing. We have the idea that there are beginnings and endings to everything. That's because we see people are born, they live a while, and they die, and the body is gone. But that's an illusion, because the soul, the consciousness, cannot die. It never dies. And the fact is that everything has always been there. And this is, again, Leibniz's question. Why is there something rather than nothing? There's something rather than nothing because there has always been something, and that is primary consciousness. That is what we call God. It has always been, always will be. There is no beginning or no end. The idea of beginnings and ends are part of the illusion of the finite reality reality of 3 dimensions of space and 1 dimension of time. Once you've expanded beyond
that was really well said. That was really everybody needs to get the tape on this. That was brilliant the way you stated that. I mean but you're right. The finite illusion is the illusion of the reality that we've been put into. That's why it's difficult for us to understand in these multidimensional planes. That's why God said He's omniscient, omnipresent. He was here from the beginning to the end. He knows what's going on back with the dinosaurs, back when what's going to go on in the future. That's why He knows. That's why Jesus Himself said, nobody knows this time but the Father Himself when all these things are going to take place and transpire, because He's here, He's living. There is no time, space. He's just there. He's just omnipresent. I mean, no beginning and but how cool?
No beginning and no end.
I know cool is not a real physics word, but I like cool anyhow. But how cool is it that God Almighty Himself cared enough about us to form us, to make us? Now, let me ask you another question. Are you familiar with all these satanic groups and they see the human sacrifice and all they do? Are you familiar with any of that?
I know about it. I certainly think that it's a huge delusion and sickness. But I know
because I've read a lot of articles on that too, and they say they use the energy released from the consciousness of these people when they're doing all this to try to maintain the illusion of what's going on, try to keep us in this hologram. Let's go back to these phones. Scott said we had the phones working now. I apologize, you guys, for the phones being messed up this morning. Let's go to Cassandra in Texas. Cassandra, you're live. Go ahead.
Hi, good morning. I'm so glad to thank you for letting me talk. I have a couple of questions. I'll let you go, and then you can elaborate. One question is melanin part of our consciousness that you're talking about?
Are you talking melanin or are you talking melatonin? You're talking about melatonin?
Melanin.
Melanin, okay.
Melanin. I had heard something about to the effect that our pineal gland.
Well, the pineal gland secretes melatonin, not melanin.
Oh, it's melatonin? I thought it was melanin. Right. I'm sorry. Okay, well, correct it. Melatonin then. So that's one question. And then the other question, I've been wanting to get the attention of you wise guys that share all this information to find out, we're out here, people like us are out here, we're researching, we're reading all this information about all the negative base level consciousness that is like, that we're forced to operate in. What can we do? What can we do to overcome or to increase your
frequency? Good question, Cassandra. Thank you, Cassandra, for calling. Okay, I love that question. Okay, we're in this negative energy field right now, Doc, and you talk about this in your first book. And what can we do to elevate our consciousness above this mess and stop believing the lies?
What you have to realize is that negativity is not real. I like to make the analogy that with light, God said, "Let there be light," and there was. Light is real. Darkness is the absence of light. Negativity is the absence of God consciousness. So what we do...
Hang on a second. Negativity is the absence of God consciousness. Everybody write that down. Go ahead, Doc.
Yes. So what you do, and it's very simple, is that you always focus on the positive aspects of everything around you. Always realize that everything that is presented to you by the primary consciousness, by God. And it's presented to you so you can grow, so you can expand and become more aware and become more real and more alive and wake up to the light, to the existence of God and God consciousness throughout the universe. So don't focus on the negativity. Yes, there's a lot of negativity out there, but it's not real. The reality is your spirit and your consciousness. And the negativity is there to keep you limited and to keep you bottled up in this physical body. To be out of the body, as it says in the Bible, is to be with God. And that doesn't mean you just go to God when you die. but you have to develop your consciousness and expand your consciousness and your understanding until you have contact with primary consciousness.
Wow. We'll be right back. Stay tuned. That we're in this holographic reality that we're in, this consciousness has no locale here on this planet that we've been put into. This hologram is that, you know, it's kind of like a kindergarten to get us right with God to start with, so when we go to the next consciousness, it's kind of like our training ground, so to speak. Now, Dr. Close, you have another blog that people can go to so they don't get caught up into the trap of the Internet and all the different weird things it goes to. What is the blog that they can actually go to directly to you?
Yes, it's E.R. Close, T as in Tom, physics.com. And I've got some videos there, and I'm posting new ones every day, and there are a whole host of detailed, the math and physics is even there. And I've got people, we have over 200 scientists worldwide that are reviewing my work and Dr. Neppy's work.
Okay, give me that one more time. I want everybody to write that down one more time.
Yeah. E.R., that's in Edward R.
Mm-hmm.
R is in Robert. Actually, it's Roy. Close, C-L-O-S-E. T as in Tom, physics, P-H-Y-S-I-C-S.com.
Okay, excellent. Okay, that's E.R. Close, T-Physics.com.
Correct.
Okay, good. Everybody go to. Okay, we got just a few minutes left. We got to go to these phone calls real quick. And Dr. Close, I'm going to let you take it to the top of the hour, so if I don't have a chance to say goodbye and thank you, goodbye and thank you, because we only got a couple of minutes left because we're going to take a whole bunch of phone calls. God, everybody, you're welcome, Doc. Everybody, keep this as quick and as concise as you can because we've only got a few minutes left. Kelly in Canada, you got a comment, a question for Dr. Close?
I just have a comment. Back in the 80s, I joined a particular spiritual group, and they taught 4 techniques of meditation. One was the word, one was the light, where you can open up your third eye. The third was to open up the pineal gland and drink the nectar. And the fourth was the sound. So this I do every morning. I see this light every morning. And
concentrate on that and listen to the sound. That's what the Eastern religions call the Om sound, but we hear that in Christianity as the Amen.
Yeah, it all starts from a word, which is in the breath.
Yeah, you're right. Kelly, thank you so much. Okay, sorry I cut everybody off. Cecil in Tennessee, go ahead. You got a quick comment for Dr. Close. We're almost out of time. Go ahead.
The Association for Research and Enlightenment has studied some of the same subjects that Dr. Close has spoken about. I wonder if Dr. Close has formed an opinion about Edgar Casey and the Association for Research and Enlightenment.
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yes, I know about it. I know about the ARE. They carried my books at one time in their library in Virginia Beach.
Okay. Teresa in Pennsylvania, go ahead. You got a question or comment for Dr. Close?
With regard to using your accelerator to achieve speed of light outside of our atmosphere so you wouldn't have long travel times, 20 or 30 years out and back on an exploratory mission, your opinion?
Yes. The speed of light is relative to what we call 3S1T, 3 dimensions of space and 1 dimension of time. And beyond that, you can actually exceed the speed of light. This is why you can travel throughout the universe. But at this point, you can only do it through your consciousness, not through a physical.
You know what I also found interesting in your book, you talked about how one proton in the universe knows exactly what the other proton is doing at the exact same moment in the other side of the universe, and that Einstein had a real hard problem with that because he said he couldn't understand because that was faster than the speed of light. So you just explained that to us.
Yes, that's exactly right. Three-dimensional time explains that, and it's interesting. When I talked to Stephen Hawking about it in 1989, he couldn't get it, but now, recently, he said there are no beginnings and no ends, so he's beginning to understand that, even though he still calls himself an atheist.
You can't be an atheist to be